Ape Escape.
Howie, look, I finished it! My peak point helmet! What do you think, man? Do you think it's gonna work? I followed the professor's schematics perfectly!
Bro, that thing was put together with tape.
Well, nobody asked you, okay? It's gonna work, okay? It's gonna work! It's gonna make me 1,000,000 times stronger, even 1,001 times stronger! You'll see, okay? Alright, let's try this on.
Well,
No, I don't know the answer, okay? This thing doesn't work, alright? It doesn't work. Happy? Do you feel better now? Huh? Do you? Now what am I supposed to give the Patreons, huh? I was supposed to mass produce these. I was supposed to make these for you guys to make us all smarter. But now I have nothing to give you.
Right before the turn of the millennium, a new game came pretty much out of nowhere. That game was Ape Escape.
Now, truth be told, I was like 7 when this game came out. So my brain was like barely aware of things like video game magazines such as Nintendo Power or PlayStation Magazine. But regardless of that, I heard nothing about this game, even from the lead up to this game, or even the release and afterwards of this game for years to come.
Now, the only reason I knew of it was because a friend happened to borrow it from Blockbuster and was playing it when I showed up to his house one day. I tried it out and instantly became hooked to wanting it. Keep in mind, this was also many years after it released, and the PlayStation 2 had already been out for like a few years. Like, even trying to read up on history of how this game was announced and everything, the best information on the lead up to this game that I found out was that it was first announced in April 1999 in PlayStation Magazine, which was an RPG flavored month too, might I add. And this right here, this was literally the only thing in this entire magazine about this game.
No screenshots, no gameplay, just a little blurb released in April of 1999. Oh, by the way, might I add that the game then came out May 31st, 1999, literally about a month later?
Ape Escape is great. I love it. For what little info there is for the build and lead up to this game, it sure as heck made a statement as far as being a fun game to enjoy, and is easily a staple in the PlayStation 1 collection. So what is this game, and why is it so great?
Now, as the game implies, apes, well, they escaped. So you gotta go, oh, I don't know, chase them down. It's like, that was the name of the project or something.
As you load the game up and watch the intro, you see an ape who has acquired a helmet right in the middle of his playpen somehow, and as the curious ape as he is, puts it on and gets an overdose of intelligence with an interest of taking over the world. We learn his name is Spectre, and he uses his intelligence to make other helmets for the apes who then help him in taking over the world, requiring us to then chase after them and catch all the apes, making this an actually kind of unique idea for a collectathon. Primarily, you are worrying about the apes. But there are, of course, other things to worry about, such as trying to collect coins throughout levels and the accursed time trials.
Which I did all of them with gold medals, might I add.
if only they had platinums.
I'm going to make you regret saying that.
After the intro video, you meet the protagonist of the game, Spike, who happens to have spiky hair. You also meet Jake, the friend of Spike, the professor who we find out was the creator of the Peak Point helmet and creator of the time machine and other assorted things that we'll talk about in a bit, and Natalie, who is the granddaughter of the professor who helps him in the lab. You walk into the lab with Spike and Jake to see the professor and Natalie are captured by Spectre and a group of apes who have currently taken over the professor's time machine. Just then, the time machine begins to activate thanks to the help of the very intelligent ape Spectre. With Spike and Jake in the area that the time machine activates around, they both get sucked back in time along with all the apes. In the following cutscene, we see that Spike has been sent back to the time of the dinosaurs, and it's up to Spike to go out and capture the apes with the help of the professor's gadgets. You then are brought to a mission status screen that gives you the details of what you need to accomplish, hosted by a girl who we literally never ever hear the name of until the credits.
So this can only mean one thing.
Come on, man, they don't want to watch you look at a manual for 20 minutes trying to find...
Aha! Here it is!
As it turns out, not only is her name Cassie spelling like this, In the credits, they spell her name like this. So it's even more confusing too. You have one primary objective when playing a level: catching the apes that escaped. During the screen with Cassie, you were given a number of apes to catch, plus numbers for other collectibles to acquire as well, such as how many total apes are in a level, how many of these coins called Spectre coins are in the level, and after you get all the apes in a level, times to beat in time trial mode. Now, after all that, you are then finally thrown into the game wondering how and what you do to play this game. Thankfully, throughout this level, you will find little helpful mailboxes of information to teach you how to play the game and go about the game with actually decent, useful information. This unfortunately sacrifices the look of it being the time of the dinosaurs, as this is your decent definition of a tutorial playground. You are initially introduced to the Stun Club and Time Net, which will be your bread and butter items and should always be equipped throughout the game. As it is thought of, use the Stun Club to whack all the apes roaming around the area here. And once they are stunned, you use the time net to capture and send them back to the present time to get them assumingly back to their normal selves without helmets. Capture the required amount of apes and you'll be able to beat the level. You are then returned to the overworld area for the game called the Time Station, which I think is a computer programmed world that Spike sits in to choose levels and save from. Or it's actually the lab and it's just been re-rendered differently. Not actually sure, honestly. So as we can see through this section of the Time Station, you will now learn the game is straight up level based. So you have quite a few levels to go through per each world, as it would be. These next two levels start to become more dinosaur-like and pre-human race times.
I'm not entirely sure a human being could really survive going back to these times right here. I gotta be real, I feel like the oxygen would be such garbage that like you would get there and you'd probably immediately start suffocating on probably some decent CO2. But hey, what do I know? I'm not a professor or anything.
Before going into these new levels, every now and then, the professor Natalie will interrupt you to give you a new gadget to use to progress through the game, with the first one starting off with being the water net, which opens up the swimming ability in the game.
Though it takes a minute to really get through these, you do really get a thoroughly thought out tutorial level, and sometimes you even get some mini games to play through these tutorial levels, making it kind of challenging, because you can also actually even fail some of these.
Once you finish the tutorial, you head on into the second level and start to see that there is more to catching the apes than the basic start of just having apes in a small area, such as having to swim around to catch the apes in the water. And like, look at this one in the third level, the prehistoric era. In order to get the ape off the T-Rex, you gotta get it to bang its head into the different corners of the map until the ape falls off for you to catch it. Once you finish the last level in the prehistoric era, you are met with a cutscene of Spectre currently making progress taking over the world. You can see he has rebuilt his helmet somehow to look much cooler and has now taken Jake under mind control to do his bidding.
Not cool, man. Not cool.
Before entering the next era, you are then given the next gadget on the list, the Monkey Radar. Now this thing is awesome in that it makes it totally possible to catch all the apes without ever needing a guide, and it also lets you see information and bios on every single ape in the game. You'll learn about apes' personalities, you'll learn about strengths and weaknesses, and of course the most important thing, their name.
Part of the fun I tried to do when I was working on a long play, which you'll be able to find about a week or two after this video goes up, was I wanted to see if I could read as many of the apes' bios as possible. For me, it just enhanced the gameplay quite a bit.
Can you remember a single name of an ape as the status of their day?
As you go into this next area called the Mysterious Age, you'll find the level kind of infested in plants. Apes are hiding in plants, plants are attacking you, and it's very forested with plants all around. Not sure I'd hide in there, especially since it hurts Spike when he gets eaten by plants. The second level of this world is a giant set of ruins which looks alien at heart, especially since you see UFOs and other strange things all over the place, with ape influence all around. For the last level, you are given the Slingback Shooter, which is exactly what it looks like. A slingshot. It's generic and annoying to use, honestly, and probably one of my least favorite gadgets in the game. Its redeeming quality, though, is the 3 types of ammo you get to use with it, such as the homing rockets and explosive ammo on top of the regular ammo. For each new level, you do get a gadget, though. They do focus heavily on that gadget specifically, so this next level is a lot of focus on having you aim around as much as possible with the shooter to get a feel for it.
As a side note, even though I've expressed some big disinterest in the Slingback Shooter, admittedly, it does work really well as a puzzle aspect item.
Once you beat the third level in the Mysterious Era, you are forced into the next level, which finally gives Jake a reason to be in this game. Jake stops you because he feels the need to race you without consequence. So all you have to do in this race is literally start it. I think you could just technically quit out of this race if you so desire, which will automatically make you lose nothing. You can re-race them until you win to get 5 Spectre coins if you want to, but other than that, the game keeps going to the next world despite you not winning, so it's totally optional.
I hope you're ready to get wet because we're going into the ocean levels of this game.
But first, we gotta learn about a new gadget that has nothing to do with water whatsoever.
Yup, it's a hula hoop.
But not as cool as the hula hex.
A what?
The dash hoop is actually a rather useful item in the game later on, but right now, I kind of feel it's a hindrance, which is all in how you have to use it.
So it's time to talk about the controls for this game, which at this point was a very, very unique way of going about these controls, and kind of honestly added to the future of gaming in some ways.
This is a Sony PlayStation DualShock 3 controller. By comparison, it is more or less the same in design to the 2 and the 1, so this will be fine for now, as it is what I use for my playthrough.
Now, as far as I know, this is the only game that required a DualShock controller with the 2 joysticks and stuff. This is the only game that ever required it on the PlayStation 1. After the PlayStation 2 release, this was a standard, so it was always just a natural thing to have these available.
Ideally, you move with the left stick, which is simple enough, but you use your item in different ways with the right stick. For example, you can swing your club with the stick, or you can point the stick with the monkey radar, and in this case of the dash hoop, you have to keep rotating the stick in order to get it going so you can move fast and defend yourself with it.
Yes, because we all know how well rotating sticks went back in the 90s, am I right, Nintendo?
So you head into the very serene beach of the aquatic levels, and let me tell you, this level is great because you can go in and knock down those ape sandcastles.
Yeah, that's what you get for ruining my day, Spectre. All your little ape friends get all their vacations ruined too. Nah.
The second level of the aquatic era is in more of a tropical cave with still plenty of water to swim around in. But be careful because somehow there's sharks and stuff in this what looks to be river of fresh water. And lastly, the third level, you get to meet Dexter, the dinosaur, who has half the level inside of him, I guess.
You know, the last time I did this, it didn't go so well.
The really gross thing about this section of the level is the green water you can swim in. Like, this stuff is straight up acid. As soon as you finish up the aquatic era, you move on to the Ice Age.
Alright, I'm ready to go!
I gotta make a mention really quick before I show this next level.
Alright, who thought making snow people into bad guys was a good idea? You know, back in the day, I used to build snow people all the time, and it was such a happy thing. But no, now we gotta make them evil. Now we gotta make them attack you and stuff like that. Come on!
That's no percent right there.
Oh, crap.
So you enter into the frozen lands of the Ice Age and are greeted by evil snowmen and apes who are all dressed for the occasion too in winter jackets. Also, because it's an Ice Age, we have to have the classic ape on a mammoth, because why not? Now, before entering the second level, you get the next gadget, the Sky Flyer.
This gadget is easily one of the most useful gadgets in the game, and honestly, it is also one of the reasons why this game is unique, just from this gadget alone.
Essentially, how this works is that you can either glide with it, or you can also lift yourself up with it if you time it right as well. This thing that has made no sense physically has saved me more times than I can even mention, and deserves a permanent spot in the gadget hotbar.
Also, I need to talk about the hotbar for the gadgets.
This right here is your quick menu for gadgets. You press the button of which gadget you want, and then it pops into your hand. But as we can see, it only holds 4 items, so you have to pause to go into the menu and switch in that item. Like, I hate how long it takes to switch items, especially when the designers decided to have you use every single item you have in a succession. Like, you have to pause and go through menus in order to flip items in and out, which takes probably a good 5 to 10 seconds each time you do it. Anyways, as you probably guessed, the next level has to deal a lot with using the flyer in order to get around places with it, which is great, until you get to the third level where it becomes totally obnoxious.
See, the thing with the flyer is that it's horribly unreliable. There's been so many times when I go to try and rotate it, and I take the stick and I rotate and rotate and rotate, and just nothing happens. Nope, not at all. You just fall down to your death, and it's awful. It had 1 and 2 times.
Seriously though, this third level is awful. If you aren't particularly ready with the flyer, you'll fall from this giant chasm many times and have to spend time climbing all the way back up. So be prepared. After all this, you really get to test the flyer to its fullest capabilities, as you must do another race against Jake. Just look at this wall right here. You have to climb this with perfect flyer accuracy. And don't even get me started on this stupid narrow beam you have to be perfect at. Win the race and get more Spectre coins and continue on. We then move on to medieval Japan, which is defined as the dawn of civilization according to the professor. You'll see a lot of cool looking past Japanese architecture in this first level, so take a second to really enjoy the scenery of this level for a moment. But it's not to say there aren't some monkey shenanigans thrown in, like this very odd underground lava layer here. The second level here is supposed to simulate probably something like the Great Wall of China, except that you'll be climbing up and up and up and up and up and up and up and
How long can I keep this joke going?
This level will test your platforming though, so be ready to really master the flyer by this point.
And finally, we get our big chance to go out and catch Spectre.
For the last level of this area, the goal is changed, as instead of it having you collect a certain amount of apes, it has you focus on trying to get to Spectre and then catching him. I do recommend you try to catch as many as you can though, because this level is super long, as there are a total of 20 to catch altogether, especially if you want to do a 100% run of this game. So you roam through this endlessly long castle, being forced to have to do objectives before you are finally in your first real boss fight against this walking armored knight, because Spectre ran.
Do I look shocked by this?
He isn't too much of a boss, honestly. Take your time to learn the moves and you'll be fine. Afterwards, you finally make it back to the present day with more levels to accomplish. But unfortunately, the professor and Natalie were captured, which means that's become another objective for us. With them gone though, this lady right here, who we never learn her actual name, gets a chance to talk to us and gives us a new gadget. The RC car is great, however, it slows the game down so much, and with some of the upcoming apes, it is horrible to deal with. So the RC car's primary function is to go through these tiny little holes here to accomplish either pushing a button or worse off, scaring an ape out of an otherwise impossible area to get to, just like this first level in the modern era. See, the issue is a lot of the times, the ape will just walk back into their holes after they come out and see Spike, which is awful because then you pretty much have to redo the whole process. Also, the RC car doesn't stun very well either, so you really have to be on top of your game to really get these apes. Anyways, throughout this first level, you see a neighborhood before entering in a sewer-like level and dodging things like barrels and whatnot. In the second level, it's more factory-driven, but hey, you get this awesome little tank to drive around in for a good chunk of this level.
The nice thing about this tank is that you're invincible from taking damage to your HP cookies while the tank is still alive.
The tank does have its own hit points, so it won't last forever. Finally, once you make it to the last level, you'll once again be tasked with attempting to catch Spectre in this giant TV tower. Sadly, I didn't see any film sets in this giant TV tower, which questions what about this was really TV themed. Climb the tower and get to the top to actually fight against the giant flying contraption Spectre owns. After a decently hard boss fight, you'll have won pretty much nothing, because it turns out, hey, there's one more level.
Someday, maybe I'll catch Spectre.
The last level of this game, though, is quite a spectacle, as you will be back to where it all began, at the amusement park, which has been spectrified into what's now called Spectreland. In this theme park, you will find many different areas to go through as you progress. You will first be required to pick between the circus or the roller coaster. If you pick the circus, you will find the professor trapped in a cage with a clown boss fight all the way at the top. Beat him to free the professor. If you pick the roller coaster, you will first be put up against this kind of decently hard minigame where you must jump at the right time in order to keep going. If you lose all your health, you'll have to start each segment over again until you clear it. Once you finish the coaster, you will then be stuck in a haunted house. Explore around and you'll eventually find Natalie and must also free her. When searching around to free Natalie, you'll eventually find a pit of apes here, and once you catch them, the cage will drop freeing Natalie, who is happy to thank you for her freedom.
And before you ask, no, choosing one or the other does not give you a different ending to the game.
After you rescue them both, you will then unlock the Go-Karts, which you would think would be super cool, but aren't. You run into Jake again, and you must battle him while he is in a super awesome fast Go-Kart, and, well, you just run around getting him to run into you. which breaks his go-kart, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. Eventually, after you whack the weak spot enough, he'll blow up and be free of Spectre's control.
This was such a missed opportunity for a final race against Jake and a post-minigame featuring go-karts.
At this point now, the next area will get unlocked, but really quick. If you're looking to get apes too, don't forget to stop at Westernland, which will test your slingback shooter ability. Westernland is just there to get more apes and nothing else. It isn't actually required to enter to progress the story. But hey, if you're looking for that Wild West kick, this will be the place for you. In this next area, you will see Spectre's real castle as it flies up into the air.
I'd say this would be Paper Mario style, like Bowser's Castle rising up, but honestly, this game came out first before Paper Mario, so I gotta say Paper Mario stole it from Ape Escape, honestly speaking.
Thankfully, it's easy enough to get to as Spectre just leaves you a teleporter. You will now have to get through the sections of this castle. Honestly, it's much of the same that you've already done throughout this game, as you'll need to catch enough apes to progress and then make your way through the platforming segments. I will say the final segment leading to the top can be complicated and easy to miss platforms and fall off. Once you finally make it to the top, there is a button that you must hit, which will literally drop you all the way back down to the beginning of the castle, where there is a painting with a secret exit that just happens to open up now.
Pranked!
You then fight a stuck-in-position robot that kind of reminds me of one of Engine's robots from Crash Bandicoot 2. Beat him, and shocker, Spectre gets away again.
But hey, you beat the game and the credits start rolling. But if you're anything like me, you're not done yet. Not even by a long shot.
After the cutscenes and credits roll, there is still plenty to do. If you manage to catch all the remaining apes in the game, you will then be able to fight Spectre one last time. Also, something else of note is you will finally be able to get the last gadget, the Magic Punch. This thing will replace your club now, honestly, because it is much more effective. Also, this thing will make redoing levels much easier, as it can break through these glowing sections of wall, allowing you to skip through the level faster.
Admittedly, to catch all the apes and get all the Spectre coins, it's gonna take a little bit more time. Also, something to take note is that even if you get every single ape in the game and you get every single Spectre coin, that's still not 100% on your file.
This leaves one more thing, the very totally optional time trials.
Now, I put these time trials off for a very long time because I was always under the impression that they were a very hard thing to do.
If they had platinum trophies, they'd actually be a challenge for you.
Bro, we don't need that level of difficulty in this game.
In order to get the full 100% file, you must gold level these time trials, which all it means is that you have to map out your paths to where to get all the apes. Thankfully, and what I didn't realize was most of these levels don't require you to catch all the apes and only require a small amount, so it makes these time trials much more easier to do.
Now, I know you guys want to see what really happens at the end of this game, but first, we have to talk about what happens with these Spectre coins we've been collecting. Like, what's the purpose of them? If you get 100 of them, do you get a free life? Like, what's going on with them?
If you collect enough Spectre coins along the way, you should have unlocked these minigames at the side of the time station. Here, you can play a grouping of minigames such as Ski Kids Racing, which looks like it was done by the people that worked on Parappa the Rappa. You do get to play as different characters, but I feel like there wasn't much work put into the actual gameplay, as skiing feels weird and it's very hard to actually catch up.
Once again, going for that push for the DualShock controller, let me tell you, each ski is controlled by each of these things right here, okay? This one controls the left one, this one controls the right one. It is confusing to say the very least. I want you to try it for yourself to get your own opinion.
Secondly, there is Spectre Boxing, which...
Whoever created this is filled with chaos. This is awful.
If you ever played Wii Boxing, try that but with the 2 analog sticks.
It's so messy and holy crap, I did so terrible. I'm kind of convinced this game is broken and was super last minute put in. Lastly, and actually saved for the best because this game was the easiest to control, Galaxy Monkey.
Now, it might be because I really enjoy rail shooters, but this one is easily the most fun out of the 3 minigames that you get.
The left stick moves you around the area and the right stick fires a weapon in the specific area that you point it to. It's actually quite a bit of fun, but it's too bad you have to find 40 coins in order to unlock it. Oddly enough, there are actually 60 coins in the game total, and you don't really get anything for getting them other than the 100% file. Once you've finally completed whatever it is you wanted to complete, you will finally unlock the last area of the game, the Peak Point Matrix. Thankfully, there is no level here here in only a boss fight, but only after a very long-winded rant by Spectre about how his life is so much better now that he is smart. Once that's done, you'll finally fight him in two forms. First, you will fight his chair form, which requires patience and the slingback shooter. Once you blow that up, you will then be face to face with him as you have to magic punch his shield to oblivion. And then, once he is weak enough and stunned, you will finally get to do it.
Yep. You'll get to catch him.
Catch him, and that will be the final thing you do in this game, which I kind of think is a solid ending for this game. You'll see the final credits where Spectre is happily back with his trainer at the amusement park to play in his cage with the other apes again.
And that is everything to know about the game Ape Escape. So now it's time to give my hexagonal opinion on this. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Who knows? Let's find out.
Controls. Well, let's get to the really bad about this game. I wasn't that fond of these controls, honestly. Did they do the job? Yep. But they were certainly clunky to say the very least. I had a lot of times where I was getting very angry because either the controls wouldn't do what I wanted because you had to be very particular, or the other issue would be the camera. I fought a lot with the camera and it would spend a lot of time not responding to what I wanted it to do. It could be really frustrating, and that's honestly why controls are going to get a lower score. Controls get a 3 out of 6, making them just okay from me. Music. The music in this game is alright, but I never thought it was the most memorable. Like, with the exception of the main theme, I never find myself referring to Ape Escape music all that often. But it isn't to say that there aren't some jams in this game when you get down to it. The main theme is a jam, and a couple of songs like the song from the Molten Lava level is solid, and the Jake's Challenges music are also solid too. Music also gets a 3 out of 6 just okay from me. Graphics. Now this was at a time when 3D wasn't super new, but they were still trying to adapt and conquer the understanding of 3D. The biggest hindrance this game gets bogged down by is draw distance, honestly. There's a lot of things that should be seeable that aren't just because of the draw distance limitations of the PlayStation 1 at the time. For the time, the environments were nice and colored correctly to pop, but when you compare the detail of the world from back then to now, there's a lot of lacking detail in stuff such as the backgrounds of like the city right here. All the immediate stuff though, I thought looks alright, and rightly so, as it should be the focus. Graphics will get a 3 out of 6 just okay from me. Difficulty and pacing. Now, when it comes to the difficulty and pacing of this game, I felt it actually did a pretty decent job altogether. It does a good job at explaining everything you need to know, and most challenges are pretty self-explanatory as to why you messed up and not the game messed up. Most apes in the beginning of the game are very easy to catch and don't pose that many problems. As you get later into the game, they begin to get more challenging and complicated on how to go about them. But what's great is that they still leave easy apes to acquire so that it's not such a drag to catch all the apes later on. Pacing is good as they slowly give you new items to progress through each level with, which does open up more and more puzzles to work through, but is only hindered by the slow and agonizing switching through menus and items. Lastly, boss fights were held off until you really got used to the controls, so I think that was a good way to pace that too. Difficulty and pacing gets a 5 out of 6, making it very solid. Story. I thought the story was a pretty solid story, and stands out well enough. Somehow an ape becomes super intelligent and releases an army of apes through time, and it's your job to go through the game and capture them and bring them back. A lot of the storytelling that is done though is through the level, such as things like watching how the apes tamper with the timeline, creating civilizations for themselves, and making statues turn into ape statues instead. There's a lot of storytelling left to the imagination, which is how a platformer really can excel when there isn't too much to tell outside of gameplay. Cutscenes are also exciting to unlock, as they end up being a true progress to see how Spectre might taunt you, and it leaves you wondering what's next. Story gets a 5 out of 6, making it solid. Uniqueness. Overall, this game sticks out so well over other games. I mean, it has a legacy to this day that still sits well within other games. It has been a solid staple through the PlayStation's life, despite having very humble and quiet beginnings. It's been mentioned and referenced in other games and has its own personality that shines above many other games. Things like a helmet with a light apparently went a very long way. Things like chasing your collection I thought was great and unique and very well executed. Despite being clunky, I will still love this game till the end of time and will still always recommend this game no matter what. Uniqueness gets a 6 out of 6, making it a full unbelievable.
And with that, the final score ends up being a 4 out of 6, making this game just alright. And that is my final thoughts and opinions on this game. I'd give this game a go with as much of an open mind as possible and try to probably stick to the base game for the most enjoyment.
And with that, thank you all for watching this review. If you did like it, feel free to drop a comment, like, and subscription. There will for sure still be more to come with a music box of music from this game, plus the full game playthrough down the road. If you didn't know, I also stream regularly on Twitch every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with monthly community nights too. You can also keep up with my life through my social medias, which you can find here as well.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
I always appreciate just that at its core, and I'll see you in the next video.